Welcome back to my podcast on end times, where we're doing a series on the beast of Revelation. So we're getting into Daniel 8 with this episode, so hopefully this will be interesting for you. Let's get started. It's quite important that you watch the previous videos on this end time series I'm doing on the beast of Revelation. There's been a few videos so far. If you don't watch those first, none of this video is going to make any sense whatsoever. So I would go do that first. Okay, the powerful king. Daniel 8, 1 through 4. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after that which appeared to me at the first. So I believe that this, after that which appeared to me at the first, is actually referring to, it's after the same pattern as the vision that appeared at the first. And there are many scholars that believe this as well. So this is actually Daniel saying that his Daniel 8 vision is related to his Daniel 7 vision. So yeah, it seems to be likely the case. After we've gone through this chapter, it'll be very clear that they are directly related, that they're talking about the very same thing. And I saw in the vision, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I was at the Ulai canal. I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had 2 horns, and both horns were high, but one was higher than the other. And the higher one came up last. I saw the ram charging westward, down northward and southward. No beast could stand before him, and there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased and became great. So this horn that comes up last, I believe this is the beast of Revelation. This is the Antichrist. This is the man of sin. And it will get more into that as we go through the chapter here. Okay. The he-goat attacking the ram. Daniel 8, 5 through 6. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and he touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. So in order to understand this, let's go to the next card really quickly here. The ram destroyed, Daniel 8:7. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So this is a very powerful entity, which I believe is a king, or a ruler of a nation. And if we read Daniel 7 here, it says, After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So seems to be very similar, right? Stamped upon him, stamped on the ground, etc., etc. There seems to be a very common thread here, and that's one of the reasons why I believe that that horn that came up last, the little or the big horn that came up last, was actually the Antichrist, leading up to the Antichrist. And just before the Antichrist appears, some powerful nation will destroy another one with excessive power, right? And for many years now, I have believed that this nation will be the USA. I believe they are going to go over to Europe or the Middle East, and they are going to destroy some nation or group of nations that are over there. Believing that this is the United States is somewhat of a guess. It seems to fit really well, and I'll explain a little bit more of that as we go here. So if you look at this first verse here, it says, the he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. That sounds very much like modern military technology, like airplanes and things like that. Back then, militaries couldn't cross the earth without touching the ground. So that's one of the reasons I believe that it's modern. And it came from the West, which, United States is in the West. If you are enjoying this content, feel free to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the bell icon, so you're notified of any updates. If you find anything in particular to be interesting, or you have questions that you'd like answered, feel free to put some comments below, and I'll see if I can answer them. Daniel 8:8. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. So this, just like in Daniel 7, Daniel 8 is referring to the same sort of events. So this was fulfilled by Alexander the Great for the horn that was broken. And then the 4 notable ones, I believe they are the four kings or 4 generals of Alexander. And then that led up to Antiochus Epiphanes, which is the type of the Antichrist. It's the foreshadow of the Antichrist. And so, yeah, I believe this is all just tying in to the exact same thing. Now, one of the interesting things here is it says, towards the 4 winds of heaven. So I believe that this is a direct reference to Daniel 2, which is talking about, I saw in my vision by night, behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. So I believe that God was putting this in there so that we could see the clear connection. And because otherwise it's kind of hard to connect these things sometimes. And so I believe he gives many nuggets of information that kind of allow us to connect things. And then of course those are the what comes out of the sea is 4 kingdoms. And then in Daniel 7:20 it says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, though whose look was more stout than his fellows. So this leads right into the next card, which is Daniel 8:9 through 11. And out of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. And so this little horn, I believe, is in fact the one that is being referred to in Daniel 7. He comes up and he destroys 3 kings, or subdues 3 kings. I don't believe they're actually destroyed. And he has a mouth that speaks very great things. So all of these kind of things are kind of interconnected. Okay, and we continue on here. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. So I believe this is referring to the Antichrist, as I've mentioned before. And in particular, it's talking about the host of heaven, which is the angels, right? And he brought some down with him. And so I believe it's talking about fallen angels. And he's magnifying himself to the host of heaven. And then if you keep going on, you read, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, which is God, right? And as we talked about in the previous videos, he'll be a man speaking great things, exalting himself above God, proclaiming that he is God, just like it says in 2 Thessalonians 2. Paul wrote about this. And so Paul's actually, when Paul wrote, he's actually referring to the book of Daniel, chapter 11, chapter 7, chapter 8, that sort of thing. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So that's one of the reasons, of course, why I've always said we have to have a temple. We have to have another temple before any of this can occur, because we know it's for the end of time. We know it's for just before Jesus comes back, and because of that, there must be a temple. This can't be a prophecy of the past, other than the double fulfillment thing, but it must be fulfilled in the end as well. And then Daniel 7 and 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So that's the part there that we're talking about. And just a reminder that Revelation 12 and 13 play into this quite a bit, talking about this host of heaven and the stars and all that sort of thing, and how the fallen angels were cast down with Satan, and they only have a short time, that sort of thing. So you can go refer to that as well to get more context. So we look at the next verse here regarding transgression. And an host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So recurring themes in the entire Bible is that as things approach the end, transgression, sin, etc. will become greater and greater. That's what this is referring to. So this was a problem during Antiochus Epiphanes' time. So if you go read the Maccabees, you'll see that they were giving into idolatry and doing what all the people around them would do and that sort of stuff. And so that's kind of the first fulfillment of the prophecies. So those things occurred, and it's pointing also to the future that it's going to occur again. So let's take a look at First Maccabees. In those days there went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device, clearly they're becoming very interested in nice living and luxury, just like we read about in, Revelation 17 with the prostitute and Revelation 18. Living in luxury, that was more important to them, right? So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. So clearly they're completely reverting to their animalistic nature of humanity, right? Without God, we are like animals. And so that's what they're basically doing. And this naturally flows into the content in Revelation 18, like I mentioned. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, and lest you share in her plagues. For her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. And a few verses down it says, As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning, since in her heart she says, I sit as a queen, I am no widow, and mourning shall I never see. And so that's the case with the vast majority of Christians, right? They're completely content to just be complacent in their state. And so we read in Daniel 8 here, cleansing of the sanctuary. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, For how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. Now, if we read in Matthew 24 here, 15 through 16, so when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So these are the same event, right? Jesus was speaking of this as if it was a future event. And now that we know from the past few videos that this is definitely for the time of the end, it's right before Jesus comes back. He sets up his kingdom right after these events. We know that Jesus, referring to it as a future event, is actually referring to the end of time. So it's just before he returns. So what are these 2300 evenings and mornings? This is something I don't really understand. I've never really got this. I've noticed that most scholars don't really know either, I don't think. Some of them surmise what it could be, but what they say doesn't really make any sense to me. So at this point, I'm just not sure. So let's read the next one here. For the time of the end. Daniel 8:15 through 17. When I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it. And behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, and it called, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, Understand, O Son of Man, that the vision is for the time of the end. So we have this repeated over and over again. We've got Revelation saying this, that all of these things are for the end. We've got Daniel 7 saying this. We've got Daniel 8 saying this. We've got Daniel, I think 10, 11, and 12 say this, that it's for the time of the end. And so, yeah, the overwhelming evidence is that these things, their primary fulfillment is all at the very, very end of time. And if we read Daniel 8:18 through 19, and now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. But he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. So we know from Scripture that God is not willing that any would perish, right? That's why time keeps going on. Because he wants to maximize the outcomes of those who will turn to him. And so it's at the appointed time. And he knows what that time is. We don't. And that's why Jesus said, no man knows the hour or the day. Okay, so we're getting into the meat of it now, the angelic interpretations of what was being seen. Daniel 8:20 through 21. The ram which thou sawest, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So I believe this to be Alexander the Great, followed by his generals. That's the original fulfillment. But the next fulfillment, it will actually be, I believe, will be the Gentiles versus Middle East or European rulers. So I believe that the Gentiles or the king of Grecia is symbolic of the USA. And because really, if you think about it, the USA is the embodiment of Gentile nature, right? Indulgence and evil and all sorts of things. And whereas the Middle East is, and all the people over there are symbolic of the Media and Persia, that area, right? Now, there are differing opinions as far as scholars go. Partly because, this was literally fulfilled. It was Greece that was Alexander the Great, which led up to Antiochus Epiphanes. And Media and Persia were, of course, the kingdoms that were around the time of Daniel and that were in rulership at that time and were put out by Grecia. So Grecia came and destroyed them. And so this fulfillment is definitely a natural fulfillment, but because we know it's for the time of the end, it's also for the end of time. And just to repeat, we know it's for the time of the end because God's kingdom is set up immediately after these things. Okay, this is kind of a fascinating bit of information here. The final beast, not by his own power. It's a very common theme in multiple different parts of the Bible in regard to end times. So Daniel 8:22 through 24. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation. So that was talking about the ram, right? But not with his power. And then I skipped a little bit of verse 23 because it's not relevant. A king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. And you might say one of deceit, one of manipulation and control, right? That's what the Antichrist will embody. And his power shall be great, but not by his own power. And he shall cause fearful destruction, and shall succeed in what he does, and destroy mighty men and the people who are the saints. And remember, we read in Revelation that we are given into his hand, right? He destroys us, he puts us in prison, he kills us, that sort of thing. And then if you keep note of those bold parts there as we keep reading. Revelation 13:2, and the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power, and his throne, and great authority. So, not by his own power. Not by his own power, okay? Common thread here. So, let's get a sneak peek into Daniel 11. So 11:38 through 39. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. With the help of a foreign god. Those who acknowledge him he shall load with honor. He shall make them rulers over many, and shall divide the land for a price. Now, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it says, the coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan. Does this sound familiar now? Not by his own power, by the power of Satan. And the dragon gave him his power. And he had the help of a foreign god. And by the activity of Satan, right? With all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing, because they refuse to love the truth and be saved. So he's going to be a deceiver, right? He's going to convince people that he's a peacemaker and all sorts of things. And he takes the kingdom by flatteries, I believe it says in Daniel 11. Deceit. So Daniel 8:25. By his cunning he shall make deceit prosper under his hand, and in his own mind he shall become great. Without warning he shall destroy many, and he shall even rise up against the prince of princes, and shall be broken, but by no human hand. So this is, of course, referring to the same thing we saw in Daniel 7, which is the 10 toes are destroyed by the stone carved out by no human hand. And it smashes them. And so we'll read that again really quick. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. So the 10 toes is basically what it's saying. And then breaks in pieces the 10 kingdoms. So all of this is very much all related. They're all talking about the same thing. Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 10, 11, 12, Revelation 12, 13, 17. All of these things refer to the same events. It's undeniable at this point. And finally, sealed up. Daniel 26 through 27. The vision of the evenings and the mornings that has been told is true, but seal up the vision, for it refers to many days from now. And I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for some days. Then I rose and went about the king's business. But I was appalled by the vision and did not understand it. And then the next, in Revelation 22:10, and he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. So Daniel's time, the vision was sealed up. But in the book of Revelation, it says, do not seal up. Why? Because Revelation is the key to decoding Daniel, right? It meshes together like a key in a lock, so to speak. And so through all of this, we're able to discover these truths. And without it, if it had been sealed into a mystery, we would maybe not quite understand what's happening. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I will be making more videos on this topic of the beast and the Antichrist. If you would like to get notifications for that, you can subscribe below and click the bell notification icon. And yeah, see you in the next video. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up below. If you enjoyed the content in general, please subscribe, hit the bell icon below. Some of the scriptures in this video are from the ESV by Crossway, used by permission. Many thanks to Crossway for allowing me to use their content. Thank you.